Hello and welcome back to the Virtual Coffee Podcast. I'm Bekah, and this is a podcast that features members of the Virtual Coffee community. Virtual Coffee is an intimate group of developers at all stages of their coding journey, and they're here on this podcast sharing their stories and what they've learned. Here with me today is my co-host, Dan.
Hey, Bekah. Season 3, this is exciting. We had a really great season 2. We heard from all sorts of people. Yeah, we had a lot of great conversations in the last season. You know, we talked a lot about finding your voice and building confidence as a developer, and we heard a lot of great stories from different people, and it was a blast. And we are pumped to be back for season 3 with some great episodes.
I'm very excited to be back too, and I thought
Pumped.
would be...
We're pumped.
I am excited, and you are pumped, okay?
Very pumped.
I am very excited. As we move into season 3 of the podcast, I thought it would be fun to talk a little bit about what we've learned as podcast co-hosts. I think we can talk about all of the seasons.
Yeah. I mean, well, when did our first episode air?
January?
Something like that. So it's been half a year or whatever. I've learned a lot. I've learned a ton from the technical, perspective. Producing this, with you has been, I don't, just like a new thing to learn every week. It seems like, and it's now I'm at the point where I know all the things I don't know. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, sound quality stuff, editing, things like that. I've gotten to the point where I can do it. You know what I mean? And so now it's like, now I know all the things I don't know, or at least I know that there are a lot of things I don't know. You know what I mean? But it's been fun. I feel like I've been at least from the technical standpoint of podcast stuff, kind of getting my feet under me.
Yeah.
So
I can start the intros without laughing all the time.
Yeah,
most of the time.
I feel like we've been using Zencastr, and they released a new version of their software, which was pretty cool, which we enjoyed a lot. And they have a countdown thing now. So when you hit when you hit start record, there's a little countdown, and I feel like that almost helps us, because I don't know. I feel like that was where we get tripped up, is because it hit record and then there'd be some pause and nobody knows if they're supposed to talk or not. So it's a small touch. I feel like that has helped us.
Yeah. Well, I think getting more comfortable too. In the beginning, it was just, it's different being interviewed on a podcast than interviewing other people, because you have a different role as a host and you're there to try and tell the story. And I think it took a little while for me to kind of wrap my head around that. And maybe going into season 3, I feel like I've got a better grasp on storytelling as a podcaster, rather than like, okay, I have this list of questions and we have to hit all the questions. Like, we have some backup questions, but where is the conversation going? And how can we keep that up and tell the story of the person on the show and think about what would benefit anyone who's listening to the podcast?
Absolutely. Yeah. From the host point of view, I have, I don't know. I felt like I've tried to learn a lot too. And I'm at the same point where it's like, okay, now I can see the things, that I don't quite do well, or that I, think I can improve on. And, some of them it's clear how to fix, and some of them it's not always, but I don't know, it's a journey, and it's been fun. It's also, everybody that we talk to are people that we like and are part of our community, and, they're friends, some of them close friends, some of them, new friends for me. And it's been just a blast to be able to talk to everybody and learn more about them personally too, and hearing everybody's origin stories and crazy boat plane training incidents, and just hearing more about from people's lives. It's one of the things that I like, and that I like about the in a virtual coffee, is when these conversations get off track, and not off track, but get whatever, that don't have a track, right? Like you were saying. And I feel like those always end up being the most valuable conversations. So
I love it.
And it's been cool trying to apply it here.
yeah, I love chasing a tangent. It's a good time and usually come out with something interesting at least.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely.
It has been fun, getting to know people a lot better and to learn about their lives and the things that they've gone through. It's really been great for me. Like you said, there are things that you take away from every episode and every person that we talk to. And I just love that after we're done recording a podcast for every season, where we've recorded almost all of the third season, but there's always been something in every episode that I've taken away and just thought about for the rest of the week. And it's really helped to inform the way that I've done things and the approaches I take. So it's been great to, be able to have that live learning experience.
Yeah, I agree. And it's just been like little tiny breakout rooms with just you and me and one other person. And it's been really very cool experience. I'm excited about season 3.
Yeah. We're really excited to be sharing this season with you all too. We're going to be talking about recognizing your potential, navigating interviews, overcoming career stagnation, how to do a proper Tim Tam slam, and a lot more.
That's right. So kicking off season 3, episode 1, we have Jono Yeong. Jono is a senior software engineer. He's originally from Australia. He's currently based in Seattle, USA. And he's primarily a back-end developer, but is enjoying re-entering the crazy world of front-end development. He loves giving back to communities and empowering others on their developer journeys. And without such a supportive community, he wouldn't be where he is today. And he says hash browns are his guilty pleasure food. So today he'll be talking to us about digital gardening, learning Elixir, and how to do a proper Tim Tam slam.
We start every episode of the podcast like we start every virtual coffee. We introduce ourselves with our name, where we're from, what we do, and a random check-in question. Today's random check-in question is, if you could have one person narrate your life, who would it be? Hey, I'm Bekah. I'm a front-end developer from a small town in Ohio. And I am going to change the question a little bit because I feel like it. I decided I didn't want a narrator. I wanted a musical background. And I would just like to choose everyone that sang in Frozen 2 musical background to just sing my life story for me, because that seemed more fun.
Sure, that would be cool. So this is like, that makes me think of Monty Python, like the guy, what is his name, Sir Robin? The guy following around Sir Robin. So boldly goes Sir Becca, she's doing something. I don't know.
Exactly.
I can't think of it, but like, yeah, I like that, a musical narration. I can get behind that. Hi, I'm Dan. I do front end development. I'm in Cleveland, Ohio, and if I had to pick a narrator, I was thinking for a couple minutes about this, and honestly, Sean Connery is who I landed on. I think it'd be pretty cool. I just listened to a podcast about The Rock, the movie, and which of course he's in it, and that made me think, oh man, what about Nick Cage narrating your life? Which would be it could be pretty interesting too. I'm sticking with Sean Connery, but I would like to know what that would sound like. Nick Cage just kind of narrating somebody's life in their heads.
I feel like that's like two very opposing voices.
Right, right. Which is why that movie is so good,
Yeah. Oh my God, amazing. Hi, I'm Jonathan. I am a senior developer at Shopify, currently based in Seattle. And geez, Bekah threw the curveball in with a musical number. I am not that musical, so no, you're totally fine. I think I would go a fictional character being Yoda. Potentially could get annoying after a while, but I think Yoda would be like wisdom right there. And then a real person, Nick Offerman. I just hope he laughs at some point during my life story, just to get that sound clip in.
Yeah, he has an excellent laugh. With the Yoda, yeah, Yoda would be. I mean, it would be like great, sound wise. I'd be worried that Yoda would be judging me all the time.
Yeah.
I feel like you'd really
100%.
have to pay attention. Like you have to think, because
Right.
he wouldn't straightforward narrate what would happen. He would just be
Oh, that's true too.
dropping Yoda wisdom about what happened.
Yeah.
That
I
might
think
send me
he'd
into
make
an
my
existential
life sound
crisis.
more
I don't
exciting.
know.
Yeah.
I have enough of those already. So welcome, Jono. We're very happy to have you here on this third season of the the Virtual Coffee Podcast. I'm doing an excellent job already. So we really like to start with a little bit of the background, your origin story. So if you could give us your short version of how you got to this point in your life.
Yeah. I have a pretty boring, or I guess standard technical background. So I did a 4-year degree at university, interned at a company during that time. And then at the company, I was kind of doing iOS work initially for a few months. And then they got me on a Ruby on Rails project. And that's really when, I really fell in love with web development and decided to kind of pursue that route. So from there, went to kind of another kind of Ruby on Rails shop in Sydney. So I'm originally from Australia. And then eventually moved to the States, still working with Rails all the way through. And now I'm in Seattle and now at Shopify.
I
That's
also
awesome.
feel like I could have you narrate my life. You and Mike Rogers, like, can we go back and forth between the two? It would be a very happy time for me.
Just so much happiness.
Well, that is awesome, and we are glad to have you at Virtual Coffee. I don't remember when you joined Virtual Coffee. Do you?
I remember the circumstances. I was in a code newbie chat and I was talking about seeing Virtual Coffee, and I tweeted about it, being like, "Hey, this seems like a really cool community." And then I think you tweeted at me saying like, "Hey, come join at this time," and that's I think it all kicked off, and it's been almost maybe like 6 months, maybe a bit more. I don't know. I can't. What is time?
Right.
Yeah, we just recorded our podcast episode wrapping up season 2, and we're talking about that too, like looking back on time. And I just kept throwing out random numbers of months because I literally I have no idea. I have no idea. It was, it was after the pandemic started. I know that much, and then after that, I'm just like, I don't know, it's all just a big cloud.
Yeah. So one of the things that I think would be cool to talk about, I know you updated your site yesterday or
Yeah.
sometime, and it looks really awesome. So we'll post that in the show notes. But there's this concept of digital gardening that you talk about, and I think you practice. So I'd love to start there. And first of all, what does that even mean, digital gardening?
Yeah. So digital gardening is really about curating your posts. Like, you don't need to have fully formed or finished written work. It's really about having a thought and then building on that thought over time. And it's kind of the opposite of a blog, which is almost like a feed that's sorted in chronological order. So with the digital garden, you kind of pick and choose what you want to present up front. It's really about that curation. I definitely got heavily inspired by Maggie Appleton, so definitely go check out her blog as well, which is also a digital garden. Her artwork is beautiful, and she explains it really well over there.
Yeah, I've seen a couple other examples like that, and Maggie Appleton cited that is the first one I think I saw too, that I landed on of this whole concept. I think that's really cool. So do you and this is something I've been sort of interested in for a while too, but haven't really, my blog is old and I don't update it that often. But it is still like old, the regular style. So when you're doing like the curation process, right, for older posts, do you just remove them, or what, or do you tuck them away somewhere, or can you explain a little more about how you handle like that sort of stuff that maybe isn't super relevant anymore, but you did write it, 5 years ago or something?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think the curation in my mind, yes, to some posts going away. So I actually removed a bunch of posts that when I was migrating over to this new site redesign. And then also being okay with putting a big work in progress box. So actually I have a post about GitHub and Notion, And Notion, this was pre Notion's API, and this was really just about how I organize side projects. But now that Notion has an API, it would make a lot of sense to make something where GitHub and Notion actually talk to each other. So I put like a big alert box saying like, hey, I am going to be working on this.
Mhm.
Expect things to change.
So as you update that post, and I read that post, I really enjoyed it. As you update it, your plan will be to literally update that post as opposed to doing a part 2 or a see this or a whatever, things like that.
Yeah, exactly.
That's pretty interesting, and it is, and like I have seen other people do it. It's there's the question of like time with regards to technical content, especially, is always sort of interesting to try to handle, right? And I have
Yeah.
one of my, and I mean, a lot of this is because I don't write that often, but still, one of the posts on my site that gets the most traffic is some old CSS like float hack thing, and it's still
Oh,
like, I mean, it still works, but it's like, not at all
yeah.
anything I would tell somebody to do now. You know what I mean? And yeah, I've thought about how to handle that, or so if this was a digital garden, I suppose the answer would be to well, either toss it and just point them back to the, I don't know, main page, right? Or just rewrite the whole article at that same URL, or something like that.
Yeah,
Right.
I mean, you can keep that old post around. Like, it's really your playground. You can really do whatever you want with it. There's no really hard and fast rules. I think like if you wanted to toss it or update it, you totally could. You could also write like a new update post. I think
Yeah.
the key idea is really just not waiting for perfect to publish. So you don't need to. You can just publish a thought, and it'll be okay. And I think this reminds me of someone in Virtual Coffee. Maybe it was Vic, who just did a timer and was like, I'm just going to write what I can, and by the end of the time, I'm just going to publish this. I think that like feels like the digital garden essence to me.
Yeah, Vic has been doing a lot of that kind of stuff, and he's been someone I've admired his work with that too. The not perfect, the get it out the door, kind of get it published, thing has been really cool. I would say inspirational. I don't know if you can be inspired if you haven't actually gone and done it. I mean, I haven't actually gone, done anything with it, but it is cool to see. I do like that attitude, and
I
um,
think,
Yeah.
it's cool.
I mean, for me, the hard part would be going back and updating things. Like, I get them out and then I don't. I mean, I have a master's in English and it was the same thing. Like, I got excited, I wrote the paper, and then, like, to go back and edit
Mhm.
was the worst. So I don't know, like, how do you motivate yourself to do that? Or are you like, well, I'm not motivated, so then this isn't something that I need, and you can take it away, or just say like, this is a weed? I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a great question. I think it's definitely going to be a work in progress, as in like I'm still trying to figure out that process a little bit more. I know that when I was trying to write like a blog post every week or every 2 weeks and just trying to like push out new content, it became really hard, and I was in a bit of a rut. Like it just felt like I was going from deadline to deadline. So like giving space to not need to write a new post every single week, but be okay with like updating old posts. Mainly just also I'm lazy. So like it'd be nice if I could just take something that's already written and then just add a little bit to it as opposed to like writing a whole new thing.
Yeah, I was, speaking of doing that, lots of people will make a goal like that of a blog post or whatever. I think that, thinking about it, it seems to me like the most important part is actually just writing, like the habit of writing, right?
Yeah.
And publishing something every week is, sort of a straightforward goal, right, to do. But I was listening to a podcast, maybe the Indie Hackers one a while ago, and they were talking about, I don't remember who the guest was, but he was talking about like long form writing instead of lots and lots of posts. One post that takes him months to do, and it's long, a long read or whatever. But that he found it to be much more, for himself, like writing, to be much more enjoyable, which I've been interested in too recently. And I feel like that could fit really well into the digital garden model, because you could even do your drafts if you wanted to, or parts or whatever, and keep it going. Like that'd be
Yeah.
kind of cool to see. It would be cool to see it, like to like watch it grow. If we're gonna keep down the like the metaphor, the garden metaphor.
Yeah, I really like that point of doing what you enjoy, because I think that is really the key to it all. Like you could write deadlines, you could have deadlines and write blog posts, but like if there's no why, or like you're just doing it because you have to, it's not that fun and you're not going to keep doing it.
Right. Right. I mean, that's been my personal experiences. Lots of times, yeah, things not, and like that's one of the reasons why it's good to build habits, because sometimes it's hard to sit down and write, but if it's like a thing you're used to doing, then um, then that part is not hard anymore. And then it's like, well, then it's actually writing that you have to deal with. But it's
Yeah.
your mind makes it not as big of a deal, at least for me.
Yeah, and I like the point about like writing what you enjoy, because I also see a lot of people that are writing things that they don't enjoy and they hate doing it, but they just keep doing it because they think that they need to do it, which um just sounds really miserable. So how do you find, okay, one, what do you enjoy writing about, and like how do you go after that when you're writing?
Yeah. Man, that is a great question. So I've figured out that I really don't enjoy writing tutorials. They take me a lot of time, and I feel like I don't do it very well. So there's that. But I think like what I most enjoy is really just exploring new tech, and then just kind of getting into like how I learn and what my process is. So I really like writing about personal stuff as opposed to like technological stuff.
Do you think that you write, or would you say that you write because you think you should be writing as a developer, just to kind of extend yourself into the community, or it's just something that you want to do?
Yeah, it actually started off being like, oh, I should be doing this. I should be writing, I should have a blog just so you get the exposure and you can tweet about something. But it's kind of transitioning a bit more into like, I'm trying to find the enjoyment out of writing and like figuring out like why I like doing this. And then realizing that writing or getting better at writing and written communication is kind of everywhere. Like it's pervasive. It's not just in a blog post, but like I'll do this at work where I'm writing documentation and like emails and stuff like that. Like that's all really important, and I've only really just started realizing that about a year ago or something.
Yeah. So I talked to the tech interview study group a couple of months ago, and I was talking about networking, and one of the things that I said was that a lot of times we have this very narrow idea of what networking is, but in our industry and the things that we do, we can create a wider network. So networking can be writing a blog post or tweeting, or like curating that digital garden, and so that allows you to have a community that you don't know. And sometimes it's really fun too, like especially at virtual coffee, someone will come and be like, oh, I read your post this one time, and you're like, oh, that's cool. So it's really nice to kind of extend yourself out there, and in you kind of meet people without even knowing it.
Yeah, totally agree.
So I was just looking back at your blog post. So in your for the readers, and we'll obviously post this, but the blog post you were talking about how you use Notion and GitHub projects together, right, to track side projects.
Uh-huh.
So one thing I was just like kind of curious about was like what you like to do with side projects, or what kind of things you have going on. Are they, I don't, are they just like fun? Are they like hobbies? Are they possible revenue sources, like that sort of thing? I was wondering kind of how you approach the side project life.
Yeah. Yeah, I have a lot of, I think, fun side projects, and there's a lot that I've just started and like have never like finished or touched after the initial start, as I'm sure a lot of developers do. But yeah, most of them are around like how can I learn this thing? So I have a side project around like a concept or something that I want to learn. So this is weird because I am on a visa, so it's kind of weird. I don't know if I can actually earn another revenue stream, so I haven't really been pushing towards like doing that stuff. But yeah, that's where I am.
That is interesting. I have no idea. I mean, I have no idea how that works. Probably a good thing to check out, I suppose, if you were gonna if you were gonna
Yeah,
step into
exactly.
that. But honestly, maybe that might make some of your decision making easier, right? Because you don't have to think
Yeah,
about don't have to worry about that part, for a while. That's kind of fun.
yeah,
Is there any specific one that you've been into recently? Any of your side
yeah.
projects?
Yeah. So, well, this personal website was, I guess, a side project because like I was building with
Sure.
Svelte kit, something that I've never really built before or used before. And then on the other side, I'm learning a bit more about Elixir and Phoenix. So I've been building this thing that's I'm trying to document on YouTube, which is like a social media app for puppies. I don't know if that makes sense at all, but essentially it's like you have like a bunch of puppies that you add to the side, and you can follow dogs, and you can have like little meetups and stuff. That's the grand idea, but it's really just about a learning project.
That's
That's
awesome.
cool.
Can you just talk a little bit about what Elixir is? Just give some definitions for the things that you talked about.
Yeah, no, that's great. So Elixir is a functional programming language. It's written by Jose Valian, and it has a lot of Ruby-ish syntax. So if you come from Ruby, you feel like that initial layer feels a lot like Ruby. But then when you really dig down into it, it's all about functional programming languages. So immutability is kind of like a big component of it. And yeah, there's all these like little extra features. And the language itself is an interpreted language, so it's built on top of Erlang. So think like Ruby is kind of built on top of C almost. So everything can compiles down to Erlang.
That's pretty cool. Yeah, there's a lot of interest in the functional programming language, space, right? These days, which I enjoy as like, on a nerd level. I haven't really dug into any of them. I know Kirk is into, shoot, I can't remember what it's called.
F? No, not F sharp. Haskell? No. Just throwing out
Uh,
languages.
yeah, this is silly because I actually like contributed to his project, and I'm totally blanking on the name. I'm sorry. I'll come up with it. But anyway, it's I don't know. It's neat. The functional stuff I really enjoyed when I did computer science for a couple of years in college, and enjoyed it. There was a language called Scheme that we used in school, and it was just fun. I don't know. It's neat. It's a cool little paradigm.
Yeah.
I end up in JavaScript. JavaScript itself is not functional like strictly, but you can like lean that way pretty hard. And it's fun. It's kind of fun to do that.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the whole reason why I moved, like, started learning about Elixir was because I kind of was burnt by a few things in Ruby and JavaScript where it was mutable, but it wasn't obvious that it was mutable. Like the example comes to mind, which is I was working on my personal site, was the JavaScript sort. It like sorts in place and changes the underlying object, and it just like broke everything. I was like, what is going on?
Yep. Elm. Yeah, thank you, Becca. Elm. It was Elm. That was the language I was talking about. I came up with on PHP, and it's even more absurd than JavaScript in that regard. It's gone a lot better, but you never really know if it's going to mutate the object in place or return a new one. It does both really, and so yeah, so you get the new one and you're thinking cool, but you go back to the old one. It turns out that one's changed too. It's not fun. PHP also has like like I said, they've improved a lot, but all these different array functions. Some of them came from Perl, and some of them came from like C, and so they're all named like there was like you never knew if it was going to be array underscore sort or like sort with no array, and it's like all this nonsense that I loved, but it was very hard to deal with it as well sometimes.
How did people write programs back then? Like, I don't understand.
Yeah, like lots of trying and failing, and lots of bugs that nobody knows about until until much later, and all that sort of stuff. No tests, FTP, hit save and then FTP up to the server and see if it works. That's how I did it anyway. I don't know.
When I was first building my blog, I didn't know that you could run things locally, and I also didn't know so I was just like committing things and seeing if they worked or not. So I don't even want to go back to when I first started that repo, because all of the stuff in there is just me making like these minor tweaks or seriously messing things up, and like, oh, how do you undo that? Because I also didn't know that you could take back commits, you can change things. It was a wild time, I think, back then.
Yeah, I still make those kind of commits. Like I made a bunch of commits where I'm just like removing a trailing slash just to see if like my HTML tag is working properly. Okay, well, this isn't working. I have no idea what I'm doing.
That's all right. That's what like squash merges are for, right? Just hide all that stuff. Yeah, no, I was
what I should be doing.
I was working on the our GitHub, our I'm sorry, our co-working sort of room, and involves like a Slack app and a Zoom app and Netlify functions, right? And up until a point, you can kind of point it to your local stuff, but eventually you have to like point it to a server. You have to point the Zoom app or the Slack app to a server, and that was incredibly hard to test. I ended up doing the same thing. I was just like I was sending stuff up and have it deploy and then see if it worked. I have a Slack, like a test Slack workspace, that's just like Dan's whatever test Slack, and there's like 4,000 Dan's in there because I was testing a new, like what happens when a member joins, and if I didn't get it right, then I had to make the change, commit it, let it build, and then join again, with a new account and see if it worked. And so it's like the Matrix with Agent Smith. It's like it's just like a Slack that's just full of 1,000 me's.
Oh my gosh.
Don't go there.
Oh,
It's
that's
frightening.
scary.
I hope
I'll send you an
one
invite if
Neo.
you want. Yeah. Oh, man.
So you also talked about doing videos, and so I wonder, like, can you digital garden videos? Is that a thing? Is that like Instagram
Ooh.
Live? I don't know.
Yeah, is that maybe.
And how does that like play into this role of content creation?
Yeah. Oh man, interesting. I would say digitally gardening videos is harder than writing because you have to do a lot more editing in a video. You can't really just cut a piece out and then like add a new piece in. It wouldn't like kind of make sense almost.
Maybe it's live streaming.
Have you tried Descript yet for video editing?
I haven't. No, I've been sticking with the.
You can literally copy and paste like text, and it'll do the video and the audio and everything like really well. Sorry, they don't sponsor us or anything. I'm just been excited about it.
Wondering, yeah.
Sorry, I didn't mean to. Well, I did. I guess I did mean to interrupt, but I didn't want to. I did. I don't know why I said. I don't know why I like interrupt on purpose and then say sorry. I didn't mean to interrupt. Anyway.
No, you're good. Yeah, I mean, yeah, I think that's a really. There's so many tools out there, which is great, and like I think Bekah mentioned live streaming as well, which I guess like you can kind of pick and choose. Nikki T is doing a really great job with live streaming, and he's kind of like rolling with the punches and learning Rust, which I think is really cool. I do think like where I see video, because it is a completely different platform, it's kind of like YouTube, so that you can't really curate YouTube videos as easily. It's like they own that platform, so they kind of show it how they want to show it. So it is a little bit harder in that sense.
Yeah, and I think with YouTube you can't change them either, right? I mean, if you change them, then it's a new. You have to create a new video and delete the old one, or something like that.
Right. Yeah.
And you lose
it would be your
playlist.
Exactly. You would just create new ones.
That's interesting, though.
Yeah.
Now we're going to invent digital gardening for videos.
That would be cool.
Or it wouldn't at all. So you're doing these videos, and is this just kind of along the same lines as what you're doing with your digital garden? You're working on these things, learning them, and then just providing another avenue for people to kind of learn along with you?
Yeah, I think exactly that. And it was also a challenge for me because I'd never really done video stuff as well. So at the start of the year, I really wanted to kind of explore it a little bit more. And then I realized that I really enjoy doing it. I don't enjoy actually filming the videos. It's really hard. I can't speak in front of a camera. Like I don't know how people do it. But the whole process of like editing and like getting all the music and all that stuff is really fun. So yeah, it's been a goal, and a lot of the content is pretty similar to what I would put in the blog, but it does go through more in-depth tutorials because I hate writing about tutorials, but I think showing is just a lot easier to follow and a lot easier to explain in my mind.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. And so you can, I suppose, you don't have to like create all the screenshots or the, grab the code examples perfectly if you're just showing, when you're doing like a screen share and showing the app like in place, right? Just take somebody for a tour. I can totally see how that would be.
Yeah, and you can go on like tangents, and you can get lost a little bit. And it's a lot easier to come back to the main thread than it is in like a blog. Like you can't just write like an extra 1,000 words on a tangent and then expect them to like keep reading after that.
You could, but
Yeah,
just might have to go back and delete some of my blog posts.
Have you been doing? I'm sorry if I might have already answered this. Have you been doing much streaming as well? Aside from the produced ones, have you dug into that at all?
No, I haven't. I've been thinking about it. I don't kind of come back to Nick. I can't speak and like learn or like do something at the same time. So it would really just be like it'd just be silence. You just be watching me on my computer. It's a skill. I don't know how you do that.
Yeah, no, it is. I've been wondering about that too. I've been thinking about digging a little bit, and this I was paying attention to myself coding. Not I wasn't streaming, but I was just like I haven't like talked or moved for like 3 hours. So, like, this is not going to be fun for anybody.
I think one of the things about it is it's nice if you can do it with a partner, because then they can kind of fill in. Like Nick does it with Christina, and Seth and I are going to be doing it in a couple of weeks. And the first time Seth and I did it was like I had not ever live streamed, and I'm terrified of it. Like it's not something that I feel comfortable doing. And immediately I froze up, and Seth was right there kind of like talking through it, like, okay, well, this is what we're gonna do, and I'm like, okay, now I feel comfortable and I can kind of go along with it. And so to be able to have that conversation, I think makes it a little bit easier, because then you have way less pressure on yourself to be doing all of the things.
Yeah, 100%. That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, I've enjoyed times when we just jump on a Zoom or whatever, and people, like if somebody posts an help in pairing or something and has a problem, right? And pairing up, like doing the pair programming and just sort of recording it. I think that's kind of what you're talking about, Becca. And like it's easier for me to ask questions or to answer questions than to like, I don't know, think of all possible questions and then produce content, right? Like that. The thought process for me, it's like uh, I don't know, you just like answer what's in front of you, right? And then just talk. But I feel like when you're streaming, it's the expectation is maybe it's a little more okay if you make a mistake, or if you start saying something and then you're like, oh wait a minute, I just remembered this other thing, or something like that. A little more like, I don't know, fits a little more into that the it's okay to make mistakes mindset, right? It's like not perfect mindset is the streaming, which I try to remember too when I consider it, right? Is it's like the work in progress kind of thing. I could see how it could all fit together,
Yeah, I think that's the beauty of live streaming as well, is the fact that you can kind of make these mistakes and you like let other people see how you kind of move on from there. I think with videos, I'm actually trying to do a video where I'm trying to show that process a bit more. But with videos, it is very edited,
Right.
so you don't see that.
Right. Well, and yes, if you went onto YouTube and pushed play on somebody's video, you wouldn't want to see them saying, I'm not really sure how to do this.
Yeah.
But like watching the thought process in a stream, the expectations will different. Like you go into a stream knowing that it's live, right? And knowing that they're probably going to be doing that sort of thing. You know what I mean? Figuring it out in front of you. And that's part of the draw, I suppose. I mean,
Yeah.
definitely part of the draw. But a little bit different mindset, I suppose, when you're creating, as a creator, right?
Mm-hmm.
Are you going to add your videos to your site, to the Digital Garden, in some way?
Yeah, I had a fleeting thought about adding like the most recent video. I think like ultimately, I'd love to create like a platform where I can add tutorials, like my own course platform kind of thing, and then have everything just work in one place. But that's very
sure. So you have like a collection of step 1, step 2, step 3 kind of thing.
Yeah.
Oh well, I mean, I could see that being fitting pretty well into the Digital Garden, idea. I could also see it. There's lots of obviously lots of different approaches to that that people have done. So that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
So for these, it seems like you're working on a lot of things that you are learning about personally. And then when you are working in your day job, you're working with Rails, right?
Yep.
And so how do you just kind of like make that jump back and forth, or are there things that you're learning from what you're learning that you can apply to your day job?
Yeah, I think like both of that is like totally valid points. Like jumping back and forth between functional to like object paradigm is really hard sometimes. I'm not very good at functional language, so I guess that helps. Like I don't have those like muscle memory yet. But yeah, there's definitely things you can learn from all these different sources that um, you can bring into any new project. I think there was a quote somewhere where it's like you're never starting anything from scratch. Like you're always taking those past experiences with you, and I think that's very true. Whenever I'm learning any of these new things, is that from Vic as well?
Yeah, I was gonna say.
Oh my gosh,
I
is he
remember
just
Vic talking about that.
Yep. And we talked about that with Sarah a bunch too on when she came on the pod. It's, I mean, she came from the agriculture tech field, and was able to apply a lot of that to her current, moved from that to, well, fintech, I guess. But I do like, I mean, that idea. So we've talked about it before. It's that idea of leaning on your past experiences, and how
yeah
it can all be relevant to you or to your current platform. It's funny thinking about that, switching between like when you're learning a new paradigm sort of, and you have an old one. It's like that balance point of when your muscle memory tips over and you start actually like reaching for functional things when you're back in Ruby, or vice versa.
yeah
When you're learning, so this is a wait, I'm sorry. Oh, Elixir, right?
hmm
So you're learning Elixir. Do you find yourself doing things like, how do I do some Ruby thing in Elixir, like that kind of Google search or thought process, or do you try to sort of erase your mind for the moment, when you're trying to learn a new thing, and do the pure like Elixir way or whatever, if that exists?
yeah. So I definitely have a bad habit of like, how do I do Ruby in X?
Right.
Because I'm just so used to Ruby and Rails and stuff. But I think like getting into the weeds of the language is really important. So like I'm trying to like switch that mindset to like be more of like, okay, how do I do this in a functional language rather than how do I do it in Ruby and then transport it over.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I know like in the Elixir Slack, people talk about it a little bit where it's you run into a lot of issues when you try and just like port over Ruby into Elixir. Like a lot of things just don't make sense and don't work, or like
Yeah.
anti patterns almost.
Yeah. That's interesting. Has there been any like specific things that you can think of that like approaches you can take when like back into the Ruby world from the new stuff you've learned?
Yeah. Great question. I think the biggest thing is really just the immutability aspect of it. So
Mm-hmm.
like, making sure like I am being really explicit with what is changing under the hood in Ruby has really helped. And the Elixir concurrency model is, I would say, like, is built a little bit differently than how Ruby's concurrency model works. So it's all about passing messages and not about changing the data that threads share. So kind of taking that functionality into Ruby as well, at least on an architectural level, has really helped.
Nice. Oh, that's cool.
You also mentioned you had done some iOS development early on.
Oh my gosh, yeah. A long, long time ago.
How was that? Okay, so you did iOS and then Ruby, and now you're learning Elixir. So is there like a pattern that you've seen that you've worked through those changes, or as you've grown, or things that you've learned and can apply as you learn the new things?
Yeah. Well, I have not touched iOS since like 2015, and that was like on the cusp of like Objective C switching over to Swift. So I don't even know what the new iOS language is. Um, so I think like I remember early on, the way I learned was really just about repetition. So it's like, how many times can I run Rails new and just like understand how all of that works? And then I remember having just so many Rails new projects with just like one model in there, just to kind of because I just never finished that project, but also I felt like it helped build that muscle memory of like what a model looks like, where it goes, how all this fits in. And now I've started thinking about, well, how can I like shortcut that, because it takes a really long time if you're just doing a lot of repetition. So really thinking about how the pieces fit together, making those analogies from like previous experiences, like with Elixir, obviously Ruby doesn't always fit, but like how would this look in object oriented, and what the differences are has really helped. And then finding the naming of things has been really useful, both with like onboarding a new job, just understanding what the definitions are, and then also with like learning languages, because there's things I want to Google, but because I don't know the name of the thing, I'll be like, okay, so question mark dot in JavaScript, like what is that?
Yes, that syntax especially is so hard to Google for. Wait, is that? See, now I can't even remember. Is that the nullish one, or is that the? This is every time yes, learning new languages is hard. Keeping up to date with languages that you've been writing in for a long time, it turns out also hard.
Yes, just learning
right.
is hard.
learning is hard. But yeah, that idea of like learning the Google language for a language is, I feel like, a very interesting concept, and something that it's something that sort of the way that people who are experienced with a language or a concept, the way that they Google for things is different, right? Than the way somebody who's learning from scratch, for learning for the first time does. And I feel like that's one of the things that is cool to show in like pairing or streaming is those Google searches. What are the kinds of things I search for? Because I, in JavaScript, like a pretty effective Googler. You know what I mean? And it's not. And I've done this where I've in Slack, with somebody's asking for help, and I've tried to like, I find the answer pretty quickly, and then I'm like, here's what I searched for to like find that. I never know if that's helpful. Like that, it's probably not that. I mean, seeing the process is probably kind of helpful. I don't think you can just like teach yourself how to Google in JavaScript before you know it. I think it just comes along with learning. But it is an interesting thing that I don't think you think about often when you're in the middle of it, or when you're trying to share, trying to help somebody learn, things like that. It's I wonder if there's a phrase for that, because the Google language is not not very clear, but
like how to Google or something.
How to Google in JavaScript, like but it is I don't know. It's cool that you mentioned that, because it's it is like an important piece of learning, I think, is finding out how to find things out, right?
Yeah. And it's hard to think about that sometimes as well, because once you've done it a bunch of times, it becomes almost like you just do it. It's like a thing you don't even think about. But yeah, and then trying to explain that to someone who's just starting, it's like there's a bit of a disconnect there sometimes. It can be really hard to explain.
Yeah, absolutely. And when you're coming from a place where you are, pretty experienced with some language, right? I feel like it makes learning new languages a little easier, because there is like some shared vocabulary across pretty much all programming languages. And so if you can remember some of them, the syntax will be different, but the concepts lots of times will be the same. Like string interpolation, for instance, is a thing that, what that means in JavaScript is basically you have one string and you can stick variables inside of it. I mean, that's what it means everywhere, right? And JavaScript does it one way, and other languages do it a different way. But if you Google, string interpolation Elixir, you'll probably find the answer right away. And if you can't remember that phrase, which is what happens to me a lot, then it's like, okay, put two strings together with variable, Elixir or whatever. And that Google search will not be as good, and it's and I mean, this happens to me because these phrases, as you've seen during this podcast recording, these phrases disappear from my brain very quickly, and then they come back. But it's another thing that's hard. I feel hard to, when you're learning, especially as a beginner, that you don't think about it as, like you have a power as an experienced developer that you probably don't realize.
Yeah. And it also, please go ahead.
I was going to say, this goes back to your point about communication and, you're writing, and that's part of communication and learning how to do that. But like even Googling is part of communicating, being able to speak into the world what you need or what you want, right? And so sometimes it's easier just to go to a group of people. Or I know like yesterday I was working on how do I get a Slack reminder to this channel every single day. And I'm like, well, I know Marie did that. So I'm just going to ask her first because it's late and I need to get right to the source. And I know that she can point me in the right direction. And she did. She was like, this is what I look for. And it took me right to where I needed to be. And so sometimes, knowing who to ask the questions to that can help you understand how to ask them the next time is a really good step in communication and in learning or, writing, whatever. But all of these things are ultimately skills that we all need to be using.
Yeah, asking for help is so hard as well when you're first starting. I remember I did not ask enough questions when I was starting to learn Ruby on Rails, and I felt like there was almost this like stigma of like it felt bad to ask questions. Like I had to struggle with Google for a bit before I did. And yeah, it's a terrible way to learn. Like just go ask someone.
Yeah, it is really hard. Well, and you went to university, so you had the traditional-ish classroom experience. And so
Yeah.
I'm curious because I'm a boot camp grad and I learned by myself, so I didn't really have that experience of people asking questions around me. Did that happen there? Like maybe I'm imagining in my head what I think it would be.
Yeah. I mean, people definitely ask questions, and there was plenty of people that asked like very, I guess, questions with answers that just went over my head. So there's definitely a lot of courses in uni that I have never found that useful in real life. So yeah, but it is like, I guess it is kind of building that ability to ask the right question.
Yeah, I mean, it's very different being in a university where you're expected to ask questions versus like in a job. It seems like the stakes are a little bit steeper or something. I know that a lot of boot camp grads are like, "Yeah, I'm done with boot camp. Like, finally, I can breathe." Like,
Yeah.
no.
Did you ask a lot of questions in boot camp?
No, I mean, I didn't have the opportunity to ask a lot of questions because it was a self-paced thing and there were some opportunities for meeting with people, but there weren't that many. And I just didn't really know about expectations. Like, should I be working with other students on things? And I don't know, I was a mom of 4 kids, so some people would be like, yeah, we're getting together for 5 hours. Come, like, no, I can't do that, or that's late and I wake up early because I've got kids. So I just never really kind of found, I think, maybe the group of people I could have learned from in that situation. Um, but I mean, I talk about this all the time. I've gotten a lot better with communicating. I don't usually spend many hours on the same problem without asking a question. And if I do, it's only because of my stubbornness. Like, I know I can get this, So that's more of a me problem, I think.
I think like you also touched on a really great point where it's like you couldn't find the right people. I think finding a community, especially when you're like just starting out, that really made a lot of difference in my learning journey, was finding like the Code Ruby community and then getting a bit more involved with like Ruby meetups and stuff, just so I can have the people around me to actually ask those questions.
Yeah, and I love the Ruby community. I really thought after boot camp we did Ruby and Rails, and I thought, well, that's what I'm going to get a job in because everybody was so nice and
Yeah.
I liked it and I understood it. And JavaScript and React, I was like, well, this is awful. And here we are.
Yeah, JavaScript is awesome.
Is it though?
Well, I feel JavaScript fits my, my way of doing things, which is, kind of whatever.
I mean, I really enjoy it now. I like to be able to problem solve in the ways that I'm doing and think about things differently. I think a lot of it just took me time to understand all of the things that we're talking about, like how to communicate it and how to understand it. And I don't know, people just seem less friendly and JavaScript land.
I think there's just a lot more JavaScript developers, and no knock on JavaScript. JavaScript's a great language. It's used everywhere. But yeah, there's just a lot of people using it, so you get a much wider range of characters.
Yeah, and I think the full stack nature of JavaScript, so you can write in, Node, and you can write in whatever browser, or React, or everything is like, you say you write JavaScript, and that doesn't even mean anything anymore. I mean, it means it doesn't like tell you a lot of information about what they're actually doing. Whereas, if somebody's doing Rails, I can imagine pretty much what they're doing, like from on a day-to-day, basis. You know what I mean? It's like, and if somebody says, "Oh, I write Node," okay, that's cool. Like that means you're doing some backend stuff. But if you just, there's all of those people are writing in JavaScript as well, and all of the people writing React and all the people writing Vue and just writing vanilla JavaScript on, on simple web pages. It's all in the same pool of people, right? So, and JavaScript doesn't have like, well, I don't know. Ruby started with at least or Rails started with, this sort of community lead around Rails that built up as well. I know they had some struggles recently, but
yeah,
I feel like honestly that's part of the and I'm not deep in the Ruby community, so you could correct me if I'm wrong, but I do feel like that was part of the community that built up back in when was that, 15 years ago or something like that, around Rails, because that's when I started hearing about Ruby, was when Rails, got going, and a lot of people just kind of excited about the same thing all at once, in a positive way.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, I mean, yeah, obviously there's definitely some topics to be discussed around Rails and the community, but I think like a lot of that started because everyone wanted something better than PHP, and I think it was really groundbreaking at the time. And it still is. Like there's still big companies like Shopify still uses Rails. So yeah, I think a lot of people kind of wanted that change, especially from the Ruby community.
Yeah.
So I want to back up maybe a little bit, just a second. So we talked about, you're doing Rails and there's an expectation maybe of what that looks like, but can you walk us through what that does look like practically? Like, what are you doing at work? What does your day-to-day look like?
Yeah. So I think the day-to-day really is around, I think it's pretty similar to most other jobs where you take an issue and you pick it up. And a lot of the Rails stuff is really just about connecting with all our different components. So we have kind of this Rails engine type architecture. So just making sure that, and Rails engine is really just like a library that you can just like plug into your application. So making sure those connections work. And then we use GraphQL a lot at Shopify. So I'm like learning about that aspect too, and how everything kind of fits together. I'm not sure if I answered your question though.
Well, I think that's a good way to think about how you're approaching your day-to-day and what's going on there.
Cool.
So I feel like I don't want to leave this podcast without giving you a huge shout out for sending me Tim Tams, because it was a life-changing experience. So can you explain to everyone what a Tim Tam is?
Sure can. They are an Australian chocolate biscuit that is covered in chocolate, and the two layers of the biscuit also has chocolate in between the two layers. So it's pretty amazing. And there's different flavors in Australia where you can get different stuffings in the middle. You get double coat. I think I sent you a double coat as well. Send me a double coat. Yeah, okay. Which is like just a thick layer of chocolate. It's been really good. I've been rationing them out as well. We're almost out.
Which I should have rationed them out. I will not tell you amazing. How many of them I ate for breakfast every morning.
Yeah.
Okay, so do you prefer the double dip Tim Tams or the single?
The double coat for sure.
See,
but
we enjoyed the single here.
Ooh, interesting.
Wild.
I just love the more chocolate, just way more chocolate. Sorry, Dan, I'll have to send you some Tim Tams.
Yeah, no, I'm just
you're missing out.
Tim Tamless over here.
I'm glad there are not Tim Tams in Kroger, because
I know they sound dangerous.
They are very dangerous.
It's so easy to eat, and there's not that many in a pack.
Nice.
there were not enough.
Yeah, exactly.
And simultaneously too much.
Yeah.
Do you eat your Tim Tams with tea? Because I heard that's how you should do it, but I had mine with coffee.
Yeah. So I think tea is the way to go. You could probably have it with coffee. I'm just not sure. I guess coffee chocolate would be a pretty nice flavor combination. But there's a thing called the Tim Tam Slam, where you bite like each end of the Tim Tam and you like suck the tea or coffee through the Tim Tam like a straw, and it like melts the chocolate a little bit, and then you just like shove the whole thing in your mouth, and you just have like a melted ball of chocolate with some crunchy texture and also the flavor of the tea or coffee.
That sounds amazing.
Yeah, it's very messy.
I feel like
You have to
there's
find
a
that
live
balance.
stream coming up where we're
Yeah,
trying
right.
out some Tim
Yeah, we
Tams.
gotta get some
Oh my
to some
God.
people, and we'll do a group. Try-
Groups.
I was
Yeah.
like, I
She does that.
fully intended to save them for virtual coffees and have them a little bit at a time. Just gonna do it.
No, they're just too good. Yeah, there's a balance to the Tim Tam Slams though. I've definitely waited too long in the tea dunk, and the whole Tim Tam's just like slid off.
Sure.
And I've been like, well, now I just have Tim Tam in my tea, and that's less delicious.
Oh, practice, right? Practice a little bit.
Yeah, exactly.
I gotta practice.
It's like the best practice you could do.
Oh man, that sounds really good.
We're gonna do that at our conference. We'll do some Tim Tam slams. That'll be a
Oh,
Yeah,
whole
can we get?
session.
I mean, we should reach out. Is Tim Tam, sorry, a brand or like a product that a brand makes?
It's a product that a brand makes. So Arnott's is the brand.
Okay. So that's
there's
who we
Tim
should
Tams
reach
in the
out
state.
to for a sponsor.
Exactly. Yeah.
Get the
Okay.
podcast sponsored by. We'll just start every podcast episode with the Tim Tam Slam.
They don't have to give us money. They just need to send us.
No, just send us the.
Just to
Yeah,
be
yeah. No.
clear.
Just send us the Tim Tams.
That's it.
Oh yeah, that'd be amazing. That could be Tim Tams in the little, because they also have. So if you take a flight back to Australia, they'll have like little single pack Tim Tams that they give you as like the plain snack food. So we could have that in the VC swag bag.
Ooh, yeah.
Yes.
Yep.
So many great ideas.
I like it.
Okay, so I feel like that's a really. Oh man, I was gonna pun so bad right there. I'm not gonna do it.
Do it.
Nope, I'm not doing it. It's a really great way to wrap up the podcast, I think, with something. Nope, still. Somebody stop me from punning.
We need more puns on this podcast. I'm
Do
pro.
we
I'm
need
pro.
more
I'm
puns,
pro.
though?
Pro pun.
I could embrace that. No. Did you just say no?
I did not. I'm in favor, as I said.
Okay, all right.
A bus just drove by. I don't know if that's what you heard.
The bus said no.
Maybe, I don't know.
The universe has spoken.
I just ignore what the bus says outside. It's
Oh, that seems like the right thing to do. Anyway, thank you for the Tim Tams, and thank you for being on the podcast. I feel like this was a really good exploration of the digital gardening and learning and growing, and this was a lot of fun. So thanks for being here.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me.
yeah. I also add my thanks. This is fun.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Virtual Coffee Podcast. This episode was produced by Dan Ott and Bekah Weigel and edited by Dan Ott. If you have questions or comments, you can hit us up on Twitter at virtualcoffee.io, or you can email us at podcast@virtualcoffee.io. You can find the show notes, plus you can sign up for our newsletter to find out what Virtual Coffee's been up to on our website at virtualcoffee.io.
Please subscribe to our podcast and be sure to leave us a review. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next week.